Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a massive overhaul that's set to change how millions of us in India get paid, get hired, and even think about our future. The government has basically rewritten the rulebook, taking over 29 different complex labor laws and squashing them down into just 4 new codes. So what does this actually mean for you? Okay, let's jump right in with a question that's probably on your mind. These new rules could seriously shake up your payslip. And it really comes down to this big trade-off. A little less cash in your hand right now for a whole lot more financial security down the road. So how exactly is this all going to work? Well, it all starts with something that sounds a bit technical, but trust me, it has huge, real-world consequences. We're talking about a brand new legal definition of wages. This one change is the foundation for everything we're about to unpack. For the very first time, the law is creating a single, standard definition for wages that applies across the board. Now, this isn't just about semantics. This definition, which is your basic pay, your dearness allowance, and your retaining allowance, is the magic number that's used to calculate all your Social Security benefits. Like your retirement fund and your gratuity. And this right here, this is the core of the change. The new codes say that this wages part of your salary has to be at least 50% of your total pay, your cost to company or CTC. This is a direct shot at the old practice where companies would keep the basic pay really low and then pump up the allowances, which, had the effect of reducing their Social Security payments.
Let's look at how this plays out with a real example. Let's say your total salary package, your CTC, is 100,000 rupees. In the old system, a company could have set your basic pay pretty low. But now, that wages component has to be at least 50,000. So what happens? Your contribution to your retirement fund, which is a percentage of that basic pay, jumps up from about 8,400 to 12,000 rupees. The trade-off is crystal clear. Maybe a bit less cash in your pocket today, but a much, much healthier retirement fund waiting for you tomorrow.
All right, let's shift gears to the second major impact. And this one has sparked a ton of debate. The new codes are completely redefining the rules around hiring, firing, and how companies and workers interact. This visual just perfectly captures the central debate, right? On one side of the scale, you have the argument for boosting business. Give companies more flexibility to adapt, and you'll encourage investment and create more formal jobs. But on the other side, you've got this very real concern from workers and unions. Does all this new flexibility tip the scales too far and weaken job security for millions of people? The most controversial part of this whole thing really boils down to this one number, 300. It used to be that any company with 100 or more workers needed to get government permission before they could do layoffs or close down. The new code triples that number to 300. What that means in the real world is that thousands of mid-sized companies can now downsize or restructure their teams without needing that prior government sign-off. And as you can imagine, the opposition to this has been fierce. A joint forum of central trade unions put it really bluntly. They said this change eliminates an essential security blanket for employees, basically arguing it strips away a vital protection against sudden or unfair downsizing. But here's where the story gets really interesting. While some of those traditional job protections are being debated, these new codes are also rolling out what might just be the biggest expansion of Social Security in India's entire history, especially for folks who were totally left out before. And this is a truly massive deal. For the very first time ever, millions of gig and platform workers, the people delivering your food, the drivers for your cabs, they are being officially recognized and brought into the Social Security system. This is a pioneering move to create a safety net for a huge, and let's face it, a rapidly growing part of our modern economy. So this new safety net is getting wider in a few really important ways. First, those platform aggregators, they now have to contribute to a special Social Security fund just for their gig workers. Second, gratuity benefits, which used to take 5 years of service to get, are now available to fixed-term employees after just 1 year. And this is a big one. Every single employee is now legally entitled to a formal appointment letter. No more ambiguity. And when you look at it visually, the change is just staggering. Minimum wage protection used to only cover certain types of jobs, which was only about 30% of the workforce. Now, it's universal. It's going to extend to every single worker in the country, whether they're in the organized sector or the unorganized sector. That is a huge leap. So what's the big idea behind this whole thing? I mean, why such a massive overhaul right now? Well, the thinking behind it really comes down to a dual goal that the government is trying to hit. The government is really trying to walk this tightrope. On one hand, they want to untangle that complex web of old laws to make it much easier for businesses to operate, to invest, and ultimately to create jobs. But on the other hand, they want to expand that social safety net to make sure that as the economy grows, not a single worker gets left behind. And let's be real, the old system was a mess. It was this crazy patchwork of over 24 laws. A lot of them were leftovers from a totally different era. It created a compliance nightmare for businesses and, crucially, left huge chunks of the modern workforce, like all those gig workers, completely unprotected.
The sheer scale of the cleanup is pretty striking. You can see it right here. That whole messy framework of nearly 30 central laws is getting boiled down into just 4 much cleaner codes. The big goal is to move to a system of 1 registration, 1 license, and 1 return, which should slash a ton of red tape.
So the main laws are now in place, but that's actually not the end of the story. What happens next is just as important, because it's going to determine how all of this actually works in the real world. And here's the final piece of the puzzle. In India's federal system, labor is what's called a concurrent subject. That's just a fancy way of saying that both the central government and the state governments have a say. So even though the 4 national codes are passed, actually putting them into action depends on each individual state creating its own set of rules. This means the rollout is probably going to be staggered, and we might even see some variations from one state to the next. And this brings us right to the final, critical question. This whole reform is a massive national experiment. It's an attempt to balance 2 really powerful forces, unleashing economic growth by giving businesses more room to breathe, while at the same time trying to build a universal safety net for everyone. Whether India can actually pull off both at the same time, well, that's going to define the future of the workforce for decades to come. So can this new system really deliver on both promises, growth, and protection? It's the central question, and we would genuinely love to hear your take on it in the comments below. And hey, if you found this breakdown useful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching The Explainer.